Aloha family, this is your boy Gerald. It is Thursday, the 1st of June 2023. How is everybody doing? I've got so much I want to share with you. And no, there's been a lot going on behind the scenes. And trust and believe, oh yes, you're missed. And because of that, that's why I continually stay prayed up. Because I pray for those that may need the extra support in whatever their reality is. Who am I talking to? So, I'm gonna try to be concise, but there's so much I want to say. So, I'm asking for a little patience if I get a little off track. But everything is found in this message. Because this message is for the intended heart, intended mind, at the intended time. Because no matter where you are, in a town near you, city, state, worldwide, if this is the moment, you will find it as you should, unconditionally given, because you're worth it. So, give me 1 second, because I'm trying to multitask. Okay, so I'm back. So, you're going to hear some music in the background. It is copyright free music found on YouTube. This creator goes by the name of Faso Productions. He's found on YouTube Music, and I imagine he puts his stuff out all over where it can be heard. Um, but I've noticed I've always had a kindred spirit when it came to listening to various styles of music, because at one time I wanted to be an aspiring uh, DJ on in broadcasting, and God had other things in mind, like having me serve my country and travel all over the world and have many conversations with people in various places. And in turn, it helped me get to this point in defining and understanding myself at this point in my life. So I know I know it feels like I've went under a rock and like, but what's been going on, Gerald? Well, I can tell you a lot has been going on in regards to what I've been working on. I'm still planning on going live. I'm still setting things up for my podcast, even though I know podcasts, the concept of it is extremely saturated. Um, and I just believe that those who have something to talk about, that those are the ones that will they will stand the test of time, you know. But I commend anyone that is embarking in whatever your creativity or form of creativity is, embrace that aspect of you. Now, speaking of social media, I've noticed that there's been a lot of peaks and valleys when it comes to talking points. For a while, there was a lot of conversations about separation and why and what do you need to identify yourself or stand out. And I noticed when these discussions took place, they always ended up agreeing not to agree, which you're entitled, because everybody's intended to have their own opinion and perspective. But the one thing that I've also come to know is the fact that when it when it comes to dialogue about the things that you need compared to things you want, there's not a lot of people willing to stand on what their conviction is. And I believe this has always been preparation for my calling. And I continue on that journey because I do this for you and because you deserve it. You're blessed. So, one of the things that I noticed, there was a talking point out there. Um, Regular media kind of mentioned it for a hot minute, and then they stopped. And one of the discussions was that Congress was considering making DNA identification for uh, newborns mandatory, and a lot of people felt a certain way. They felt that was violating their civil rights, and you had some that saw the benefit in that, you know. And if anything, how across the board it would be definitive for both parents without a shadow of doubt to even say, well, this is my child, and there's no second guess, regardless of the complexion, regardless of the physical features. Now, about 6 months ago, give or take, I made a decision to submit my DNA. I did it with Ancestry, and the reason I did it for two reasons. One, I wanted to know my heritage. I wanted to have a better understanding of why I see the world the way I do, why I look the way I do, and have a better perspective when it came to my family history because I didn't know it. I could only go back 1 to 2 generations. That's all I knew, you know. And that was a desire that I always wanted as a child. I wanted to know, who am I? So that was one reason. Another reason was because as a veteran of the United States Air Force, I did a lot of deploying. And even though I tried to be very safe when it came to my personal health, I also tried to be mindful with the people that I chose to be intimate with because there are pregnancies that happen every day. And sometimes the situation may be that the potential father may be very ambiguous of knowing because of maybe the relationship ran its course and that was not privileged for them to know. So that happens all the time in the United States military. And unfortunately, even with technology that we have today, there's still a possibility that could happen. So I wanted to have clarity that I didn't have any children in the world that may have been searching for me, wanting to know who their father was. Because I was pretty good at remembering who I was intimate with. I might have forgotten a name or two, but the one thing I never did was forget the moment, the interlude. And, you know, I wanted to know. And I remember before I even entertained this as a talking point, I remember before I came to Hawaii, my former team I used to work with, we would always have what we call barbershop conversations all the time, you know. And I remember this came up because there was a colleague of mine that was kind of going through a situation where there was potential doubt. So for myself, showing empathy regards to his emotions and how that made him feel, I would always try to look at it from the other person's perspective, because you're never going to know everything. This may be even the most critical periods of time, may be actually the catalyst of learning something new about yourself. So, long story short, I submit my DNA. And I'll be honest with you, in the beginning, I was a little nervous because I was like, well, we used to use this term in the military, don't be Jody. And Jody was the representation of the irresponsible soldier. Pretty much where the wind blows, that's where they went. And in a ramification after the fact, there was always somebody that would say, "Hey, Jody, I'm pregnant." And that was something that was always ingrained into young servicemen and women. You know, don't be smart, be safe, but don't put yourself in a position that will impact your life down the road. And unfortunately, there are those that knew full well, and and unfortunately, there are biracial children, no matter the culture, the nationality, the gender, that unfortunately were raised in environments without that parent, either because they did not know, or unfortunately, which would be very selfish, the father did not want to have anything in regards to the child. And that's why you hear people say you reap what you sow, because to make a decision such as that, because the most innocent creation that you'll ever come to know is a child. Right next to that is an animal, a pet. They're both innocent at birth. They don't change their perspectives until they're exposed to a situation that will cause them to change. Or, like we say when you have pets, cause the pet to turn. But there's always a catalyst moment. So I get my DNA back, and I'd never done it, so I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to understand what it's showing, because the one thing that I got out of that was the fact that these are all conversations that I long for from my elders, because the one thing that I always aspired to do is I wanted to know what life was like at my age for them. A lot of my elders grew up during the 50s and the 60s, so there was segregation. There was a lot of turmoil going on nationally when it came to community. Some that was unjust and some that were reactionary. But the casualty that always got overlooked was the child. Who am I talking to? So, not to be winded, as I'm starting to look at this report, I would get an email through the platform, and this woman would say, "Hey, I see that you're listed as a close family member." So I turn around, unjudging, but in the back of my mind, wait a minute, could this be a child that I don't know? So respectfully, I try to hold a conversation to understand where the family ties that bind have us together. Because at first I was like, well, maybe the program had a glitch. But basically, on physical uh, inspection, by looking at her, she had the same complexion as I, but the timelines didn't match. And she mentioned her family name. Didn't ring a bell. Because unbeknownst to me, my heritage is from the DMV area. So we're talking District of Columbia, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, and some parts of North Carolina. So it didn't register at first, but I was still respectful. And I was still curious of trying to find the correlation of, well, how did they and why did the platform make this determination? Right? A couple months would pass. I would see this older woman, slightly, she was an older woman. I would get a message, said, hey, do you have family in the South? I said, indirectly, I do by way of my dad, but because of I'm not his biological, but I carry his last name. So in my eyes, that's my dad. And I said, well, this is my mom's maiden name, and this is our family name. So there was no correlation there either. Let me show you how God works. 4 weeks would pass, and I would receive another message. And I said, wait a minute. Why don't I do a little digging up and let me see if I can see their tree. Because when you do DNA, there's an option of keeping your stuff private. And I couldn't understand that to save my life, because you would think when it came to family, you would rejoice that. But I would come to learn that we also have to take account that some people don't want that revelation. They don't. Because they feel that it may, how somebody told me, wake the sleeping dog. Now, during that whole period of time, I stayed prayed up, asking for clarity, asking for patience, asking for temperance, all done in the Most High's time. And you know what? He would. Because I would have a conversation which would shed light not only to who the second woman was, but the correlation of the second woman to the first. Come to find out, family, they were sisters. Come to find out, they were my sisters. Unbeknownst to me. And after having a conversation with one, come to find out, we were in the same area for 20 years. 20 years, family. Our paths never crossed. And that took a minute for me to process because I was like, if I never stepped out on faith to do that DNA, I would not be in the beginning stage of forging a relationship with my family. Oh, let me now, because God is a jealous but abundant God, it didn't stop there. I would find out that not only do I have those sisters, but I have a third, and I have two brothers. So from that side of the family, I would find out that I was actually the firstborn. Mm-hmm. So, what does a son do? I turn to my mom because my mom is the voice of reason. And I didn't do it as of judgment. I did it for clarity because my mom is the key to understanding my heritage, you know? And for the first time in over 40 plus years, we had a conversation, and it brought the little boy out of me. Just for the little moments that we spoke, and we had never been that way. Now, don't get me wrong. I love my mom like the moon is in the sky, and my loyalty runs deep. Even though I know at times she doesn't believe that, but I love my mom because as a child, you don't get to pick who your parents are. You do get to pick who your friends are, though, based off of what you're exposed to or what you feel is lack thereof. That is why so many little boys and little girls are drawn to what's found in the street because they think that that's where safety is. That's why you see little boys and little girls gravitating to various communities because in their heart they're saying, I want to be just like you, based off of the mentality that they have, not being able to see the perspective of what is being shown. Who am I talking to? So I've been processing this, you know, and I keep my feet grounded and my prayers going up because I know that everything that I've done thus far in my life has gotten me to this point to get the reward of knowing truth. And I mentioned this time and time again. I am an advocate when it comes to manifestation. It is real. Words have power. Demons are real. Angels exist. And the Most High is eternal. That is why no matter what religious dogma you have, the message is still the same. You heard that noise back there? I had a bike suspended on my. I'm gonna show you real quick. You gotta mind the junk because I got tomorrow's cleanup day, but I want to show you something. See that right there? That's my pull-up tower, and it's next to my speed bag because I'm about to do a major transformation and show you how God works. I'm about to turn young on y'all. But the more I talked about the Most High, that bike fell off of the handles. So I know the devil's work's not done. And that was meant to distract me from my point, but you can't. Because no weapon formed against me will prosper. And that's why I'm a firm believer of this. Those who are last are made first, and those who are first are made last. That is real. That is what life's all about. So you got to choose. So, with that being said, I realize with all humility, with all humility, I had sowed the seeds to know my truth. Hence, this is why I would always say, since 2012, speak your truth. Because I speak mine. I don't walk in fear. I walk without sight, only faith. And so, with that being said, slowly but surely, in the intended time, the things that I did not know are being revealed. I have earned the right. So, before I decided to put this camera on the phone on, the title that came to me was Fear, Captor of Your Freedom. I think I'll put that up there. Why am I saying that? Because still to this day, when it comes to yourself, the greatest battle that you will ever face will not be found outside in your community. It will be found in the mirror looking back. That is why you saw this ripple when you heard folks like Kevin Samuels use the term obey or submission. Mind you, that was spoken during vows. And unfortunately, a lot of women took offense to that because they interpreted that as servitude. So let me throw this disclaimer out real quick. You know, when it comes to submission, to have submission, that means you must unconditionally give of self. I'm going to tell you another thing that is a good example of that. It's called love. And depending on how it is fostered, it can actually be your slave too. I say that is, you realize how many people, I always use the analogy of go into your emotional backpack. Because until you're able to find comfort, to look at the things that caused you pain, the things that triggered those beautiful tears, the things that kept you at bay and kept you up at night, until you're able to look in that emotional backpack, you will never be free. Now, I know some people took it from a perspective of you talking like slaves. But if you're not living your life, embracing your purpose, how are you living? Who am I talking to? Maybe that's the reason why I would always echo this fact. Everybody on this planet is given natural gifts and talents. Those gifts and talents are the skeleton keys that are going to help you navigate this world, but it's also going to unlock your purpose. Maybe that's why little man is always angry and feeling like nobody's getting him when he tries to talk, so he acts out. Maybe that's the reason why little Tanya thinks that having sex with multiple men is actually liberating and empowering her direction. No, it never was. And I'm going to tell you why. Because we have free will. To truly understand free will, you must first have a relationship with yourself. Who am I talking to? You can't buy it. You can't manipulate it. You can't outwit it. Because what's at stake is you. And depending on how hell-bent you may be, what I mean by that is pride. There's a difference between pride and being proud. Pride is nothing but behavior spawned from reactionary choices. Proud is nothing but a display of truth, honor. But to even be able to differ the two, you must be able to discern. But see, there are those, because we live in a duality world, you may have heard the term as above, so below, that don't want you to embrace your walk, that don't want you to be at peace, that don't want you to have clarity, because that is an aspect that they have yet to master within themselves. To the point, you can't even be around them because something's going to pop off, or something spawned from emotion is going to be said with the intent of hurting you. How many of you had to deal with repetitive betrayal? You know, the ultimate form of betrayal is not done by another person. It's done by the person in the mirror looking back first. Because, see, we are all spiritual vessels first. That's why when you look at today, you look at social media today, is it set up to just simply entertain you, or is it set up to empower you? Because I'm here to tell you, you have some that their sole mission is to keep you distracted. And queens, listen up. And by the way, there was a lot of pushback about using the term kings and queens, and I explained it time and time again. I'm the one that created that. I did that as a way of showing respect to the viewers, because I will never have the possibility of meeting you. So the least I could do is show respect to my audience. Okay? That's where it comes from. And the beautiful thing about manifestation, everything that I prayed for has manifested 10 times over, and my words have reached the masses. You would not believe that based off of my subscriber channel, my subscriber base, excuse me, because it looks like I just started 4 months ago. I've been doing this for 11 years. I've got over almost 1,500 videos talking about humanity and being the best you. Why? Because you deserve it. But I can't do the work. I can only do the work for myself, because I know what's at stake. It's my legacy. It's my testimony. And at times I actually felt like Job, because anybody that may have understood the story of Job, Job lost everything, but he never denounced God. Family, friends, worldly worth, his animals, livestock, his farm, lost it all. And in turn, the devil was testing him like, I'm going to take this away, but I'll give it back if you give me your allegiance. And he would not. He would not. And in turn, in the intended time, intended moment, the Most High blessed him, and everything that he lost was restored, made new. Couldn't get back his first lineage, couldn't get back his first wife, couldn't get back his kids. They'd all turned their backs on him. Even though he wanted them to stand by him, because his heart was always pure. And that's the problem with society today. They don't understand what it feels like to be tested, because society has taught man that you are entitled. You are not entitled, because if that was the case, you would be able to control the air you consume. You would be able to dictate the beat of your heart. You would be able to dictate who has access and who does not. Who am I talking to? How about those restless nights? How about the clarity that you deserve because you're a good person? But we're human. We make mistakes. But until we are able to have that conversation with ourselves, first and foremost, you're not crazy having that conversation with yourself. Just like you're not crazy to pray. And what I'm trying to convey to you is this: until you decide to do something different, can you get a different outcome? Because even Albert Einstein said, I'm paraphrasing, to, how does it go? To offer, I'm paraphrasing, pretty much he was saying to do a certain behavior, expecting a different outcome. That's insanity. Can people change? Yes, they can. But it does not and will not until you're able to be vulnerable with yourself. Society wants you to keep the same mentality that our elders did. But the difference between what our elders went through compared to today, see, they had to make the choices to see a perspective because there was oppression going on that would cost them their lives. People were getting lynched. People were being murdered. People were disappearing. You don't believe me? Ask your elders. Some of them, they're in their 60s and 70s. They'll tell you something if they're willing to open up, because most of them won't. Most of them won't, because it was too painful. Millennials. You might not realize this now, but when it comes to your generation, you guys are losing the most lives. It's like society's convinced you that there's a cheat code to be financially successful as well as to fulfill all your wants. No, there is none. What you put in is what you get out. Like I would always say in my videos, energy out is energy returned. Because energy is transmutable. It doesn't go away. It just changes space. That is why when you're in an environment where it's calm and then somebody comes in that same room and they're pissed off, it feels like the air is being sucked out like a vacuum has come in and changed the environment. Why? Because you're a spirit first. You're a spirit first before the flesh. That's why you could be in a car accident and God willing, you injure yourself really bad. Well, those scars are going to be there. But that pain you feel, it's your spirit that's feeling that. Who am I talking to? That's why you're not going to see a million physician march when it comes to the human body. Society convinced you you wasn't good enough. Queens, I kept telling you you were made perfect. Kings, you were made perfect. Some things are never meant for consumption. But as long as you do not choose to invest in yourself, you might as well go ahead to your bank account, proverbially, and take everything out, get in your vehicle, drive down the highway, and throw all your investment out. Because that's what you're doing with your life. And here's the thing, you're not promised you're going to see tomorrow. You're not promised you're going to be somebody's mother or dad. You're not promised that you're going to earn the right to be somebody's grandparent or great grandparent, God willing. Life is about the long game and the decisions that you make while you're navigating it. It is not given, it is earned. So, to go back to my first point when I brought up DNA, I think that it should be a prerequisite right off the bat. Why? Because at the beginning, it gives the mother clarity and it gives the father definition. And what I mean by definition is you're giving that child an unbiased chance to know who they are. Now, I get it. You got some moms out there that say that's none of your business. The government needs to stay out of it. But guess what? It's different if your relationship is built off of trust, not lust. And I'm not having a judging position. I'm not. I done been there. I know what it feels like to be a whoremonger. I was a GI. And God navigated me through. And then, as is no secret, I believe that I have a son. He looked just like me. He on social media. He looked when they say mini me, yeah, I'm convinced. But until I can communicate with him and have that conversation so that I know definitively that he is my son, my heart says he is, because even his behaviors is like I'm looking at my younger version of myself. The timeline match, everything matches up. Everything, even the stuff I didn't know. And at the end of the day, a child deserves to know who they are, regardless if the relationship runs its course. Regardless, a child has a right to know their identity, because to not do that, you're building a false foundation for that child to one day, if they're lucky, to have to sift through, have to look at life just like the little boy and say, wow, wait a minute, I thought you were family. What do you mean? You're not? So there's much more at stake, because, I mean, that just shows you how amazing God is. Because I can't imagine what life would be when I didn't know. But I had no reason to assume, you know. But when they say what is done in the dark comes to the light, as well as to be true to thyself. If you want your life to change, if you do not like the environment that makes your reality, doesn't matter if that pertains to your work environment, your family environment, or the people you socialize with. If you want change, you have to be honest with yourself. That is the one thing you don't play with, because what is at stake is your emotional well-being. And until you do that, you are holding yourself hostage from yourself. You can't shop it away. You can't sleep it away. You can't distract yourself enough. Because at the end of the day, I remember when the first time I heard Diana Ross's Mahogany theme, and that song stuck to my soul. Still to this day. If you've never heard it, go on YouTube, put in Mahogany's theme, and listen to what she was singing. Those words still ring true yesterday, today, and forever. The first 4 sentences. Do you know? Do you like the things that life is showing you? Where you're going to? Do you know? Think about that. How can you prepare for your future if you don't know your past? How do you know what you feel is true was something that was imposed or suggested? That's how manipulation works. That's how propaganda works in society. That is why some things are hot and some things are not. Prime example, fashion. All these things have an impact on the psyche. We only use 6% of this beautiful brain. So you would think more than ever, make that change, like Michael said. Or you can stay in your lane. And I know I'm feeling this for somebody. You're in an environment right now, you've already seen the effects of the decisions made from your friends. And you've had that conversation like, I'm not going to make that decision. I wouldn't make that decision. And you may have even taken an approach of trying to respectfully distance yourself or pick the conversations when you're in their presence. Because you know deep down inside, they ain't happy. They frustrated. And they may look at you as the voice of reason. But the truth of the matter is, there's no such thing until they apply it to themselves. Birds of a feather flock together. But birds without a direction only attract death. Who am I talking to? That was one of the reasons why I would always say, misery is like an endless table with endless chairs waiting for you to sit down. Because the moment that you sit down, you basically gave up on your life. Them homeless people didn't get there because they didn't want to. Those were decisions made. Those runaways didn't get out there in that street. It's because decisions were made. Or maybe conversations that should have happened that would have made an impact that would have swayed their trajectory. Think about it. How many times you go to Walmart, look up on that customer service wall, and our babies are up there? Think they not worth a conversation? First and lastly, before I get off of here, There's nothing that a person can say or do to prevent you from picking up that phone. If you got issues with your family, instead of you saying, I don't fuck with them, afford them the opportunity to have a conversation. I'm going to tell you why. You're not doing it for them, you're doing it for you. There's no different than the power of forgiveness. If you are going through something right now, do yourself a favor. Go through my catalog, scroll all the way down. All the way down. It's going to take you a little bit. And it's going to be right around 2012. And I got a video called The Power of Forgiveness. Actually, you can put it in search and it'll come up quicker. And at that time, I was going through my spiritual awakening. I was sleeping spirituality. And I was a broken man. I was broken. Had my heart broke. And I didn't understand what I did to deserve that betrayal. And because I was a walking example of what every woman wanted. I might not have had 6 figures, but I wasn't hurting either. I can check off those boxes. You gotta be 6 feet. I'm 6'3", 235 pounds. Don't trip on the hair. I told you. See, for those who don't know me, after a while I get bored. I start playing with my face. 1 minute you see me, I'll have a beard. Then I cut it off and I have a goatee. Then I cut that off, do the mustache. And then I just grow my hair out because I don't have any bald spots. My hair grows extremely quick. And I know that's from my Native American lineage, which I did find out from the Alabama, Mississippi region. That's Creek Indians. That's on one side of my family. And on the other, I'm trying to confirm if that was Powhatan or Cherokee, because that would have been the Tidewater region. But I always had a inkling about that because I remember my great grandmother and what she looked like, and that was an Indian, features and all. So if I'm from her bloodline, then what does that do to me? And I find out I'm 2%. So, but I want to stop right here. Family, if you're going through something right now, do something that you haven't done. In your way, have that conversation with the Most High. Whatever it is. If it's something that makes you feel uneasy, that keeps you up at night, if it's something that you feel that they would say, they got roots on me, or somebody's doing spell work. Yeah, that stuff is real. But guess what? You know what's more powerful? No weapon formed against you shall prosper. The moment you place the Most High first, that is the moment that your life will change. Unfortunately, society has convinced a lot of people to look at life speculatively. If I don't see it tangibly, it's not real. Well, once again, you can't see the air that you breathe, but you rely on it. Nobody's promised tomorrow. And lastly, how much is your smile worth? I know mine's priceless because it took me 26 years to get mine back. So I love each and every one of you. The process is coming regarding the live feeds. Like I said, I got chat lines. I've got all the tools I need to host my show. I'm just waiting for the trademark to be official, and then once it's official, then I can actually start doing the feeds, and then eventually, because there's a requirement that you have to have so many subscribers for the podcast, just as well as you need 1,000 subscribers for so that you can do your live feeds through YouTube's regulations and guidance. But that's okay because I've got an account on Rumble, I've got an account on Patreon, I got a one through KOD, and I have there's 4 of them. So I will not be moved. Right now, this is the what we say the Renaissance period, because I already know in my spirit God's got something great, and I know that part of it is to reach the intended heart, intended mind, at the intended time. So it just matters when you decide it's worth it. God's praying for you. You know I am. I see your worth. And for that, it helps me discern mine. Love to hear from you. Be blessed.